Okay, well, I think we should have a few people starting to come into the room and join us for our This is New Zealand webinar. So if perhaps some of you are able to just comment in the chat room and just let us know that you can in fact hear us loud and clear, that would be fantastic. And we'll get underway in the next 30 seconds or minute. My name's Mark Morrison. I'm the International Operations Manager for New Zealand Skills in Demand. I'd like to thank you all very much for attending our webinar. We're going to be looking at the process involved in immigrating out to New Zealand, be it getting a job and the visa process, but also actually understanding a little bit more about life in New Zealand in general. So we're going to be covering that off. I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, Bore Chum, who's down in New Zealand.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, everyone. A good morning from New Zealand here. My name is Bore Chum. I'm the Managing Director of Migration Associates. This webinar that we've put together is designed to give you as much information about what it's like to actually live in New Zealand. I've not long since relocated back to New Zealand, having lived in the UK for 10 years. It's winter here, and I can say that life is a lot different, less hectic, and the pace of life is great. So hopefully we're able today to go through and give you a snapshot of what it's like to live in New Zealand. I will also be focusing on the visa process, and we have an office both in the UK and in New Zealand helping people like yourselves get out to New Zealand.
Fantastic. Hey, thanks, Bore. Well, it looks like we've got quite a few starting to come into the room. So for those of you who are here, I think we will just get underway. So bear with us for a moment and we'll just get our presentation up on your screens. Okay, so to give you a basic understanding of what's going to happen over the next hour to hour 15. Firstly, before we do that, I would like to pay a special thanks to the Bank of New Zealand and Migration Cover for their continued supports of our webinars that we've been hosting in 2016 and also for our seminars that we run around the United Kingdom. Without their help, we certainly wouldn't be able to put these events on. So I can vouch from Bore and myself. We're very thankful for the Bank of New Zealand and to Migration Cover. So firstly, I'm going to be looking over the next 45 minutes at an overview of New Zealand. So looking at the schooling system, healthcare, the cost of living, all the ins and outs to life in New Zealand. Being a fellow Kiwi, along with Bore, we've had first-hand experience of living the life in New Zealand, and we want to share that information with you. From there, we're going to be looking at the job process. So I'll be discussing the New Zealand Skills in Demand process and how our company works in helping international candidates connect with New Zealand employers and get through that all-important recruitment process. After that, Bore will be coming on screen and he'll be discussing the New Zealand immigration process and speaking to you about how Migration Associates can help. Throughout today, we'll be answering any questions that you might have, so do make use of the interactive Q&A section. For any questions that we are unable to answer during the webinar, we will certainly come back to you at a later date, and we'll also stick around for another 15 minutes after the official webinar to answer any further questions that you might have. Okay, so looking at New Zealand in numbers, firstly, New Zealand is a very small country, so there's only about 4.5 million of us in New Zealand, and about a third of our population live in Auckland. So the landmass of New Zealand is sometimes a little bit bigger than people think. It's relatively similar size to England and Scotland, for example, yet there's only 4.5 million people in all of New Zealand, so a lot of space. In terms of a breakdown of our population, around 70% of our population is European descent. So we have a lot of English, Irish, Scottish, and Welsh ancestry. We also have around 15% of our population is Indigenous Maori people. So our indigenous Maori population is something that all New Zealanders celebrate, and is something we are very, very proud of. On the screen there you'll see some traditional Maori carvings and tattoos on a couple of the guys there. That is certainly more for for special occasions and events, as opposed to something that you would expect to see in everyday life in New Zealand now. But certainly a culture that we certainly celebrate. Around 9 or 10% of our population is Asian. Now in New Zealand, when we refer to someone of Asian descent, we're talking more from areas such as South Korea, the Philippines, China, Japan, as opposed to the subcontinent, the likes of India or Pakistan. So it's a difference there to some other countries. Around 7% of our population is of non-Maori but Pacific Island descent. So that's countries such as Fiji, Samoa and Tonga. And for any of you that have ever watched an All Blacks rugby team, you would have seen a lot of our Pacific Island guys in our team. So looking at the weather, New Zealand has mild temperatures and it's a moderately high rainfall country. We do have a lot of hours of sunshine throughout most of the country as well. So New Zealand's climate is dominated by two main geographical features, the mountains and the sea. So we're a relatively long but skinny or narrow country. January and February are the warmest months for us, and July and August are the colder months, being southern hemisphere. In summertime, the average maximum temperature ranges between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius, and in winter between 10 to 15 degrees. Two of the main cities that a lot of you will be looking to go to in New Zealand are either Auckland or Christchurch. So Auckland is towards the top of the North Island of New Zealand and has a warm, temperate climate with hot, humid summers and mild, damp winters. It is the warmest main centre in New Zealand, is also one of the sunniest with over 2,000 sunshine hours per year. Christchurch, which is where Bore is now based and where I'm from as well, has a drier, more temperate climate with an average daily maximum temperature of around 22 degrees in the summer months and down to 11 degrees during winter. In winter, it's common for the temperature to fall below zero, but traditionally that will be associated with a clear night. So it will be cool but clear, and it will come out in a beautiful crisp. We've taken some key stats from different cities around the world and compared and contrast them with Auckland and Christchurch. So you'll see London, Birmingham in the UK, Pretoria in South Africa, and Vancouver in Canada. So as you see, Auckland certainly, double the rain, for example, of Christchurch, but then of course it is a little bit warmer, being more to the north, closer to the equator. But certainly, comparing the sunshine hours compared to the UK, a lot more sunshine hours in New Zealand than there is in the UK, and on par with Canada, a little bit further behind somewhere like Pretoria in South Africa. So looking at housing now, of course, this will be an important consideration for you when you come to New Zealand. And there are a few differences when making the move out to New Zealand that we think you should be aware of. So rental properties, firstly, are often unfurnished, apart from a few basics. So only looking at things like an oven, and then the key fixtures and fittings like carpets and curtains. Rent is normally paid weekly. So if you're ever on a website, a couple we've mentioned below, realestate.co.nz and trademe.co.nz, all the prices are quoted weekly. All right. The other thing you'll need to consider is paying about 4 weeks bond. The landlord in New Zealand pays the council tax, or what we call rates. Okay, so you don't have to factor in an additional cost of paying the rates on top of your weekly rental amount. This is included in the rental price. In a lot of areas, you don't have to pay for water usage either. So for example, in Christchurch, water usage comes out of your rates, so therefore it's being covered by the landlord or the homeowner. Somewhere like Auckland, there is the expectation that you are paying for a portion of your water usage. So it pays to do your research into which particular city you might be settling in to understand what costs you are up for. Looking at house and contents insurance is something that we would of course recommend, and just in any country there are going to be different premiums that you can consider. So do look around and do your research and see what's best for you. Okay, so we had a look at some of the average weekly rental prices in different cities and also different key suburbs in different cities of New Zealand. These figures are from February of this year, so relatively up to date. Auckland is by far and away our most expensive city, so somewhere like Ponsonby in central Auckland, you're looking between 800 and just over 1,000 New Zealand dollars per week for a 3 to 4 bedroom home. A lot of people like to settle somewhere on the North Shore, just over the Harbour Bridge in Auckland, where rent's not quite as expensive. So you're looking at around $600 to $700 per week. Tauranga is becoming an increasingly popular area on the Bay of Plenty, and once again prices are much cheaper than Auckland. So you're looking between $400 and $500 per week there. Another area, of course, is Christchurch, with all of the construction work that's happening down there and the rebuild over the next 5 to 10 years going forward. Rental properties there are around the 400 to 550 New Zealand dollars per week. So certainly you do get a lot more for your dollar outside of Auckland. So it pays to understand what your likely salary might be in Auckland to factor in the additional cost of living there. If you want to get a lot of value for your money, we would suggest somewhere like Invercargill, which is right at the bottom of the South Island. You'll get a lot of house for your money down there, looking at around $240 to $250 per week. A good website to have a look at for more detailed information is tenancy.gov.nz. You'll see that there on the bottom right of your screen. And just to let you know, any websites that we refer to in this presentation, we'll be sending you an email with a detailed list of all of those websites. So there's no need for you to be writing them down during this webinar. So ultimately, you might look to buy a home in New Zealand. Okay, that is certainly the Kiwi dream, is to own your own home, and it is still a realistic proposition for a lot of people. So a lot of urban homes are standalone and built of wood. Okay, so a little bit different to other places. We have access to fantastic wood in New Zealand, so we like to make the most of it and use a lot of timber frame homes. And of course we have a lot of space, having a low population, so most homes are, as I said, standalone. New Zealand homes potentially will be a lot colder than what you're used to where you live currently. A lot don't have central heating and a lot don't have double glazing either. Now certainly newer homes will have double glazing, will have better insulation, but it's certainly something to factor in when you're looking to rent and certainly to buy, understanding the insulation and heating in the house you're looking to buy. It's very easy for you to get along and view homes that you potentially want to buy, firstly through special property features in both Wednesday and Saturday papers, and also certain franchises put out weekly publications. Open homes are typically run on the weekends, but often on a Wednesday afternoon as well. And typically the estate agent will open the property up for about half an hour to 45 minutes. Members of the public will come and flow through the house, register their details, and they are free to look around the house for that time. The house buying process is very, very, or relatively easy, I think you would say, compared to other countries. So of course you can make your offer conditional to special conditions such as a building inspection, a LIM, which is the Land Information Memorandum, and the title, which you would get from the local council, and also you could make it subject to finance. There aren't the long chains that you have in other countries when it comes to buying a house, so it's not subject to the sale of 4 or 5 other houses in a big long chain. That typically doesn't happen in New Zealand, so the process can happen much, much quicker. Auction is a very common way of buying and selling in New Zealand as well, so it's certainly something that you would need to get comfortable with and understand how that process would work. Go and attend some auctions so you can see how that process works. You do all your due diligence at the front end of the auction process, so you would get your finance in order, you'd undertake building inspections before the auction day, and then on the day of the auction on the day of the auction you would be bidding unconditionally, and you would be paying 10% of the purchase price. You'd be writing a check out on the day. So looking at some median house prices, so looking at Auckland, as was the same with the rental price, you'd be looking at around 720,000 New Zealand dollars. Moving down to Wellington, which is our capital city, you'd be looking at around 395,000. In Christchurch, the property market has stayed quite flat over the last 2 or 3 years, so the average price is around 425,000, 430,000 New Zealand dollars. Once again, these figures are from February of 2016. Okay, looking at healthcare next. So New Zealand has an excellent public healthcare system which provides free public hospital treatments, healthcare during pregnancy and childbirth, as well as subsidies on GP visits and prescription medicines. We have 40 public hospitals throughout New Zealand. In New Zealand, we have a system called ACC, which is the Accident Compensation Corporation. This is an excellent system whereby if you're in an employee-employer relationship, your employer would pay an ACC levy to the ACC corporation. Okay, if you're self-employed, you would be responsible for paying an ACC levy yourself. Now, the system works if you were injured at work, or you might be playing football on the weekend, or out skiing or mountain biking, and you sustain an injury that you require rehabilitation for, you would be covered by ACC through all of that treatment, be it physio appointments and the like. Also, if you were off work for a substantial amount of time, you would actually be covered by the ACC for up to 80% of your income during that time of rehabilitation. So in New Zealand, we don't have suing. You don't see adverts where there's an opportunity for you to take legal action if you've been injured or felt you've been wrongly done by. So it doesn't really fit in with the New Zealand way of life. Looking at private healthcare, so a lot of New Zealanders still elect to have private health insurance as well, which is really good for immediate, treatment of non-urgent conditions. There's a wide range of insurance policies with different premiums, as you would expect. A good website to have a look at is healthfunds.org.nz. Just note as well, if you're still entitled to free public health services for accident and emergency care if you do have a private healthcare policy. So some basic costs of healthcare. So a standard GP visit, those 6 years and under, most doctors don't charge. Through your school years, you're looking between $10 and $25. Ages 17 through to 44, you're looking between $15 and $65. Those 45 and above may get a slight discount, so you're looking between $15 and $35. Now you'll note that there's a large range here in terms of prices. If we look at $15 through to $65 for an adult, that's a huge range. Now that will be impacted a number of factors, I guess. Firstly, location. So a GP in central Auckland will of course charge more than a GP in a small rural town. The thing to appreciate and understand with New Zealand is when you move to New Zealand, you will register with a GP that's probably in your area, but you're not bound by that area. So if you move house and move across town or move with your job, you're not obliged to move GPs as well. So you can establish a relationship with a particular GP and stay with them, and also you have the ability to shop around, as it were, and look at different options that work best for you and your budget. Looking at prescriptions, so six years and over, you're looking at around $15 maximum for a prescription. Those under 6 prescriptions are free. One thing that is more expensive in New Zealand is the dentist. Okay, so it's not heavily subsidised, by ACC like other aspects of our healthcare system. So we always recommend getting some of that vital dental work done before you leave your home country, before you head to New Zealand. Okay, looking at education next. So, primary and secondary school. So schooling is compulsory from ages 6 through to 16. However, most children actually start school straight away after their 5th birthday. They'll go into the new entrance class, and then depending on when they started school, they might stay in the new entrance class for a few months, or they might stay a little bit longer, and then they would be moved into year one. But schools are very relaxed in New Zealand, and of course the parents and teachers would talk and do what was best for your child. So free secular education is available, and our school years work from years 1 through to 13. It's important to note that zoning is a big factor in New Zealand when it comes to access to schools, and that has a direct flow-on effect or correlation to property prices, both in the buying and selling market and also in the rental market. So those schools that are deemed to be more desirable, certainly the property prices in those areas will be much higher. We have a decile rating for schools, okay, which is a decile rating from 1 through to 9, which basically ranks the social economic environment of the households around those particular schools. So a decile 9 school is the highest, and a decile 1 school is the lowest. So that's something that you can do your research on and start to understand particular schools and the housing and areas around them. Our school terms run on the calendar year, so it's nice and simple. So term 1 begins in middle to end of January, and then you go through to Easter time. Term 2 is from April through to July. Term 3 is July to September, and term 4 runs from the middle of October through to early or middle December, depending on the age of the child. So December, January, because that's summertime for us, everyone's at the beach, a lot of businesses wind down, and it's Christmas and New Year. So the school year stops then, and that's the big break for all the students, and everyone's on holiday and feeling really good in December and January time. So primary school goes from year 1 through to year 6, intermediate is from years 7 and 8, and then high school is years 9 through to 13. So the all-important exams start in year 11, and the NCEA is levels 1, 2 and 3, which is from the ages around 15, 16 and 17. Now for those of you in the UK, just to give you a comparison, NCEA level 2 is the equivalent to the UK GCSEs grades A to C, and NCEA level 3 is equivalent to UK GCE A levels. It's important to note some schools in rural areas will actually combine all 3 schools into one location. Okay. However, in practice, a lot of children, when they reach high school, so the age of 13, they'll head off to a school in the city and often stay in a hostile environment on site, and then perhaps go home on the weekends. Universities, so New Zealand has an excellent tertiary education system as well. We have 8 universities, and we have 20 polytechnics and institutes of technologies. Government subsidies and student loans are available as well. Now this is important to understand if you have children or yourself if you're looking to study. It's important to understand what visa you're on in New Zealand and what flow-on effects that might have to your eligibility to study in terms of time, but also the fees that you might have to pay, be it international fees or local fees. So certainly, engage with Bore and the team at Migration Associates. Understanding these intricacies of the visa process and what that means for things like study is very, very important. So a student loan for a first year full-time arts or even business commerce student is around 3,000 New Zealand dollars. You're looking around 10,000 New Zealand dollars for a first year full-time medical degree. So relatively cheap on the worldwide stage. Some good websites to have a look at on the education front are listed now, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll be making all of these websites available to you on a follow-up email following this webinar. Okay, so looking at New Zealand driver's license, firstly, New Zealand has a really high dependency on the motor car, so we don't have fantastic public transport. There is reasonable public transport in central Auckland and to a lesser extent Wellington, but somewhere like Christchurch we have buses, but not much more. So everyone has a car. I think we have some of the highest car ownership levels in the world per capita. If you have children, the minimum age to apply is 16 years old. Okay, the child will go through 3 stages, so they'll be looking at a learner license. After 6 months, they can go for their restricted license. and then 18 months later they can go for their full license, or they can in fact cut that process down by 6 months and get their full license a little bit quicker. So technically, from the age of 17 and a half, you could be a fully licensed driver in New Zealand. Okay, and that opens up a lot of freedom for the younger ones to be able to go to, drive to school or sports practices or see their friends, those sorts of things. So most parents are very happy when their child actually can drive, and it saves mum and dad being the taxi service for their children. Now, for those of you who hold a current and valid overseas driver's license, most countries who will be attending this webinar, your license will be valid in New Zealand for a period of 12 months from the day you arrive in New Zealand. So there's not the immediate pressure for you to transfer that, but certainly look at the Transport Association, the New Zealand Transport Authority Association website, and you can look into what country you're from and whether you can in fact drive on your license for that first year. After a year, it's time to convert to a New Zealand driver's license. So all you need is your current and valid driver's license. You fill out an application form, complete an eye test, and pay a license fee of $157.70. So depending on where you're from, you may be required to do a practical test, but I can say for those of you from the UK, Canada, and I'm pretty sure South Africa as well, there's no need to actually complete a formal practical driving test. Okay, so we're going to look at the cost of living now, and this is probably a question that Bora and I get asked the most. A lot of people are concerned about the cost of living in New Zealand and trying to understand how achievable it is to live and work in New Zealand is of course front of mind for a lot of people. I think the first thing to understand is New Zealand will be more expensive due to the fact that we're a small population. Okay, we don't have the consumer power of a larger country. The other thing is, we're a long way away from everything, so all those goods need to be shipped all the way down to New Zealand, and that comes with cost, and those costs are passed on to the end consumer, unfortunately. 15% is charged on all goods, and that's 15% GST, which is Goods and Services Tax, which is the equivalent of VAT in the UK. New Zealand tax rates on personal income are less than the OECD average. So the highest rate is 33%, which is on anything over $70,000. The lion's share of most people's income is taxed at under 20%. So from 14,000 to 48,000, you're looking at about 17.5%. So a litre of 91 octane petrol is $1.87. That's as of the 1st of April of this year. A postage stamp, for example, to send a letter back to the United Kingdom is $1.90. We all love our coffee in New Zealand, the guys included, so you'll all become coffee addicts when you move to New Zealand. Most coffee shops cost around $4 to $5 for a flat white coffee. This is where New Zealand can be more expensive, so it's the whiteware, it's the electronics. So a front-loading machine is pretty expensive, around 750 to 3,000 New Zealand dollars. We do use a lot of top-loading machines because we have a separate wash house in a lot of homes. So you're looking between $500 and $1,700 for a top-loading washing machine. We've got all the big brands still in New Zealand. You just might pay a little bit more for them. So you're looking at around $600 to $900 or $1,000 for a 40-inch, latest flat-screen TV. So looking at a grocery comparison now. So what we did is we went to some very standard, I guess, middle-of-the-road supermarkets in New Zealand, the UK, South Africa, and Canada, and we bought a typical basket of goods in each country. So we bought some milk, bread, eggs, butter, some tea bags, pasta, cooking oil, apples, potatoes, some good old New Zealand lamb chops, laundry powder, some potato chips or crisps, and some fantastic New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc wine. Now in New Zealand, the total came out to be about $66.51. In the United Kingdom, it came out to be £36.88. In South Africa, just over 350 Rand. And in Canada, just shy of 80 Canadian dollars. Now, we converted all those figures there below into New Zealand dollars as well. Okay, so I mean, it's very, very hard to start comparing multiple countries, of course. I think one thing to understand is exactly how we shop in New Zealand, because generally you're going to have a lot more time, you're not going to be quite as rushed. New Zealanders will go to the supermarket and do a big weekly or fortnightly shop and stock up on things that are on special. Meat might be on special at the butcher's, so you'll buy a large amount of meat at a good price, and you'll go and put it in your big freezer that you might have in the garage. And that might last you for the next few months. You'll go to a local fruit and veggie shop as well. You know, you'll buy your fresh produce there. We certainly eat our fruit and veg more seasonally in New Zealand, so you know, you won't have particular fruit and vegetable available 12 months of the year, or if you do wish to have them, you might pay, you know, a real premium for them. So you certainly appreciate particular fruit and vegetables at different times of the year as they're in season. A lot of New Zealanders also like to be more sustainable, and they'll have a fruit and you know, a veggie patch in their backyard where they'll grow their own vegetables, and children love learning about, you know, those sorts of things and getting involved with, you know, more sustainable ways of living. So, you know, people make it work, but certainly food is something that is a little bit more expensive. Okay, so why move? There's a few, well, there's obviously you know, a huge amount of reasons why, but in terms of key stats, so a 2015 Mercer Quality of Life survey brought Auckland out as the #3 city in the world to live, based on 39 factors including housing, recreation, education, and political environment. So great quality of life. In 2015, there was also a Mercer Cost of Living survey where Auckland came in at number 61 in the most expensive city in the world, where number 1 is the most. So Sydney at 31, Wellington down at number 83, and London at number 12. New Zealand has a fantastic economy, and there's, you know, a lot of job opportunities at the moment. So the recent growth we've been experiencing over the last few years is expected to continue. There are 72,000 more people employed now than there were a year ago, and they think over another 150,000 people are forecast to be in work by mid-2019. And we just don't have the population to sustain this growth internally. We need overseas workers to help bolster our workforce. In education, New Zealand 15-year-olds scored ahead of those in the UK on reading, maths and science in a United Nations Human Development report. New Zealand is the least corrupt nation in the world, tied with Denmark, according to a Corruption Perception Index. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to visit New Zealand, it will blow your mind away. In 2008, TripAdvisor named Milford Sound the world's top travel destination based on an international survey, and year after year, New Zealand ranks right up there in terms of, you know, must-visit countries in the world. Population, and this is a huge one for a lot of people. As I said, we're a similar size to the UK, but we only have 4.5 million people, so there's a lot of space. Only 5% of our population is human, the rest are animals. As I said, space, we've got a lot of space, so more people live in Auckland than the whole of South Island. So if you still like the city and you like, you know, that whole vibe and environment, then Auckland's a great place to live. But if you'd like a little bit more space in the outdoors, then maybe the South Island might be for you. And we're an innovative country as well. Okay, we're the only country in the world where all the highest positions have been simultaneously held by women. In 2006, the Queen, the Governor-General, the Prime Minister, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the Chief Justice were all women. And also, a lot of you may not know, in 1893, New Zealand became the first country to give women the right to vote. I really like this quote: no matter where you are in New Zealand, you're approximately 15 minutes from somewhere spectacularly beautiful. And Roger Stone, who was an individual that both Bora and myself helped move out to Christchurch 4 years ago now, he's settled out there, and he really loves it out there. He's actually built his own house, which is something he said he could never do up here in the UK. They live about 30 minutes from the beach and just over an hour from the ski field. So For those of you who enjoy the adventure sports, there's the possibility to go skiing and surfing in the same day, which is a pretty unique opportunity. So finally, why move? The Kiwi lifestyle, it's the 3 B's. It's the boat, it's the batch, and it's the barbecue. If you don't own a boat, chances are one of your friends or family members will have access to a boat. You'll go away on the weekend and go fishing or go water skiing. We've got access to the rivers, the oceans, and the lakes. It's fantastic, and it's a big part of New Zealand life, as is the batch or the holiday home. So going away for the weekend, getting away from the city and staying in the countryside somewhere. It's very easy to rent, holiday homes through different websites. And finally, the barbecue. So during summertime, 3, 4, 5 nights a week, you'll be sitting outside and enjoying, the nice evenings and cooking on the barbecue, and it just really fits in with our very relaxed way of life. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put my New Zealand Skills and Demand hat on now and actually cover off the process of trying to find a job in New Zealand. So unless you qualify for a working holiday visa in New Zealand, chances are you're going to need a job offer in order to be eligible to apply for a visa in New Zealand. And the challenge is you'll often see New Zealand job search ads, and if you look at a particular role that you're interested in and you'll scroll to the bottom of the advert, it will say you must be a New Zealand citizen or have a work visa to apply for this job. So it becomes one of those catch-22 chicken and egg situations where you can't get the visa without a job and you can't get a job without the visa. So this is where Skills and Demand can hopefully come in and help some of you. So we're a New Zealand-based company, but we also have a full-time presence in the United Kingdom. So I've been up here for the last 3.5 years, and up here in London with myself is Guy Lemon and also Susanna Dyson. Okay, so the three of us, our job is to engage with people from all around the world and basically get you ready for interviews, helping you with documentation, to put you on a platter and provide you to a New Zealand employer who is interested in employing you. Down in New Zealand, we have our New Zealand account manager, Glenn Davis. He's based in Christchurch. Now, his role is to establish relationships with companies in New Zealand and also assist new arrivals into the country. So just as you're looking to move to New Zealand and perhaps not understanding the process or finding it really hard to connect with employers, employers feel the same thing. Okay, so that's what Glenn's job is to educate employers on how to go about sourcing candidates from overseas. Bore spends a lot of time working with them, explaining the visa process so they understand the documentation and the paperwork that is involved in order to recruit and employ an international candidate. We work with large reputable businesses in New Zealand. Okay, these are willing and able employers, which is very, very important. We've helped over 400 candidates in the last 3.5 years get through this process. So for those of you who aren't aware, a large focus of New Zealand Skills and Demand work is on the Christchurch development. We had an earthquake in 2011, which did inflict a lot of damage on Central City and the surrounding suburbs. And this is a big project. This is a 10 to 15 year project. So we're 5 years on, and we're only about 30 to 40% of the way through the rebuild. So it's a 40 billion New Zealand dollar project, which is a lot of money to be flowing around a city with a population of 350,000 people. We need thousands more skilled tradespeople. Okay, I'll go through a list of occupations that are in demand, there's a big demand for a lot of tradespeople, both blue collar and also at more senior white collar positions. The central city is being largely redeveloped and rebuilt, and there are a number of key anchor projects and precincts, things like metro sports facilities, hospitals, convention centres and the like. There are a lot of new homes being built as well, and there's also a housing shortage up in Auckland, so there's a lot of residential work happening there as well. There's also a lot of work being done to the horizontal infrastructure, both repairs and also new developments, new roading, sewage, drainage, water, those sorts of things. All those key infrastructure pieces need to be taken care of as well. So in terms of the process of actually getting ready to get a job, the process is a document gathering one at the end of the day. Firstly, the thing you need to get is an up-to-date CV. Now, we can very easily, in fact, we will provide a CV template to each and every one of you after this webinar so that you're able to adapt your information and experience into a New Zealand formatted CV template. Okay, a recruiter wants to be able to easily get the information they need out of the CV, so it's important that your CV is presented in a particular way. We also get candidates that we can assist to complete one of our Skills in Demand candidate briefing and declaration form, which is the CBD. So we can certainly email and get those out to the people in occupations that we're able to assist. Written references are really important from former employers, or if you've been self-employed or a contract worker, then you can approach clients for those written and verbal reference contact details. The next thing you need to think about is electronic copies of qualifications. Okay, so get things scanned through to PDF files, be it degrees, certificates, licenses, health and safety, first aid, anything that's relevant to your industry and your work. Get them all on file and ready to go. You also need a Skype username. So most interviews that are undertaken are done on undertaken on Skype. So it's important to get comfortable with the program, download it, understand how it works, and so that when the time comes for an interview, you're looking very professional. And lastly, but most importantly, you need to understand and commence the visa process. Most New Zealand employers will not wait 6 months or 9 months for you to arrive. Certainly the employers we work with expect you to be in New Zealand about 8 to 10 weeks after you get a job offer. So things will move really quickly. That's basically enough time for you to book your medicals, submit your visa, get the results through, book your flights, and get out to New Zealand. You must keep your New Zealand employer happy. So you must be prepared before you're put forward for interviews through New Zealand Skills in Demand. So this is a hit list that New Zealand Skills in Demand currently has. And as you'll see, there is a huge focus on trades and construction, both in the blue collar and in the white collar space. And these roles are being filled all around New Zealand. This is not just Christchurch. This week we've had job offers for Tauranga, Wellington, last week for Hamilton, and Dunedin in the South Island as well is starting to pick up as well. So there are opportunities all around the country. Outside of the trades and construction, there are opportunities for accountants and IT professionals as well through New Zealand Skills in Demand. So certainly if you're unsure, please do get in touch with us. And we'll certainly give you some feedback as to whether we feel you are someone that we can help. Okay, so lastly, in terms of the process, so we've covered off a lot today. I think these are some key takeaways in terms of what you need to think about. Number one, learn about New Zealand. Do as much research as you can so you have decided that it's actually a place you want to go and it's something you're committed to doing. Okay, attending our webinar today is a great starting point. Overcome potential issues. Okay, you have to be really realistic about this. Do you have a house to sell? Or can you in fact afford to keep the house and maybe just rent it out as you move to New Zealand? Do you have to sell vehicles? Do you have to wind down a business? Maybe talk to employers or business partners? Do you need to inform your children of the move? Are they comfortable with leaving school and their friends? You need to think about your elderly parents as well. Okay, New Zealand is a long way away, so it's important to understand that your parents will need a support network if you're in New Zealand. Work out when you want to arrive in New Zealand. Be realistic about this month or date that you have in mind, okay, because as I said, things will move very quickly when you're put forward for interviews, and there is an expectation that you are out there to keep your employer happy. Start gathering those documentations that I went over earlier, CVs, references, qualifications, and the like. If you can get a working holiday visa, go for it. Just get it and go out to New Zealand. If you need a little bit more help getting a work visa or residency, certainly engage with an immigration advisor. Understand your eligibility, understand how the process will work. Also engage with our partners. Okay, obviously, we work with the Bank of New Zealand and Migration Cover. They'll be in touch with you after this webinar, understanding that it's very easy for you to open your bank account before you move out to New Zealand, so you can start transferring funds away. And also with Migration Cover, for example, being able to look after you, should the worst happen when you're out in New Zealand, or if things, don't play out as perhaps you want them to. It's good to know that there is a company out there that can actually look after you and, make the whole process as easy and as stress-free as possible. And finally, you can hopefully book your tickets and get on the plane and get out to that better lifestyle and that great opportunity, which I know so many of you are keen to do. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to bring Bore back on, and Bore, you're going to talk over the New Zealand immigration policy. So I hope in this first 45 minutes or so that we've been talking, that people have enjoyed and taken away some really good information on life in New Zealand in general and the job search process. But I think now people will be really interested to hear a little bit more about the visa process.
Thanks, Mark. Great presentation, and I think from the presentation, before I go on to the New Zealand immigration process, a couple of key things. Firstly, people ask about the lifestyle and the work hours, etc. I think it's important to note, what type of industry you're in. Some industries, there's a demand to work more hours, etc. I think the key thing is in New Zealand, because everything is so close, the weather's good, it's easier to kind of have that balance of lifestyle. Okay, so you're not in traffic a lot, and the pace of life is is a lot more slower. So it's very hard to explain unless you've actually visited New Zealand and then on that aspect of the work-life balance. There are people in New Zealand who do work long hours, like in England or South Africa or Canada, etc. But when they get home, the commute's a lot less. They get back to their house, they're a little bit less stressed because there's no massive commute. And that balance of life is a lot easier to achieve. So, having lived in the UK for 10 years and being back here for 8 weeks already, I found that's a big adjustment, because when I was in the UK, in London, I was rushing to get to everywhere. It was pretty much 100% on the go. Whereas in New Zealand, you can actually kind of sit and hear yourself think, and that makes a big difference to you and how you live life and how you spend time with your family. The other key thing on the forums or the questions were, how to obtain a job offer. And, obviously you'd speak to Mark and liaise with Skills in Oman. Some of you, Mark and his team, will be able to assist. Some of you may need to jump on a plane to get over to New Zealand and look for work, depending on your sector. From the information that we've gleaned from a lot of New Zealand employers, there is a skill shortage across the board in all sectors. We've had some clients who've come to New Zealand, attend interviews and obtain job offers, and they wouldn't have otherwise got those job offers without actually getting out here on that plane. So for some of you, it may require that trip to get out here and meet employers face to face. So a big part of the whole process is looking at that visa process. Who are we? We are a company that have 2 practices, one in the UK and one now in New Zealand, which is great. We have 3 licensed immigration advisors. Shortly that will be 4. I'll be bringing on a part-time advisor here in the UK. In New Zealand. And we've assisted over 1,000 families and individuals to live and work in New Zealand. The unique thing about us is that we specialise only in New Zealand immigration. And because New Zealand immigration is job-led, we have a very important relationship with Mark and his team from New Zealand Skills in Oman, because in most cases you'll need a job offer to get a visa. Okay, so where does it all start for you? Now, everyone has got a different circumstance. You know, some of you may be single, you may have a partner, or you may have children. So, depending on your circumstances, you know, the strategy that we would put in place is a lot different to the person sitting next to you. So, this is where we would complete an evaluation for you. It's free of charge. And the evaluation is emailed to you, and it helps you to understand your visa eligibility. Okay, it confirms the costs, which is really important from a budgeting perspective. Okay, and also your time frames. Okay, so for some of you who are looking to relocate, you may have property, you may have businesses to sell. You may have some key deadlines that you need to stay for. So understanding the time frames is really, really important. We also provide an immigration report to New Zealand Skills and Demand to let them know that we've screened you and that there are no issues with your visa. And that's very important for Mark and his team at Skills and Demand, because they will be communicating your visa eligibility to their respective clients, i.e. the employer. Okay, so in terms of time frames, if you're looking to get out here to New Zealand, you should really be contacting Mark and his team or employers maybe 3 to 4 months out from heading out to New Zealand. Okay, New Zealand employers will want you out there quite quickly. Okay, so if you're looking to go in 12 months time because you have to sell your house or there's an important occasion on, like a wedding or whatever, in 9 months time, it's probably there's no point in applying for jobs now, because you won't be able to actually start until 9 to 12 months time. So you need to start planning, obviously your time frame and how this all works, and completing an evaluation for you regarding your visa is going to allow you to give you some context in terms of how the visa process works and the time frames. In terms of the visa types, obviously there's quite a few, and I'll just go through a few of them today, mainly linked to the job side of things. But you've heard me, I've typed in SMC on the chat, and that's a skilled migrant category, and that's a residency category. It's points based. You get points for age, qualifications, work experience, job offer, and in most cases it's dependent on having a skilled offer of employment. You must be aged between 20 and 55, meet the character and medical requirements. Okay, part of the process requires the lodgement of an expression of interest. Okay, and we wouldn't lodge your expression of interest unless you had a job offer in place. Okay, if you had a job offer in place, there is a high likelihood that you will receive an invitation to apply. Okay, and in most cases with the people who are attending today's webinar, your application will be lodged probably in the London branch, and it will probably take about 4 months to process. Okay, there were changes last November, which had meant that you got more points for obtaining a job offer outside of Auckland. So that goes to show you the government's willingness to encourage migrants outside of Auckland. And the reason for that is that there is a massive demand for skilled work, across the board and in all regions in New Zealand. Another way to get residency is under the work to residency visa with an accredited employer. Okay, so when you're looking to apply for roles, see if you can check if the employer is accredited. If they are accredited, this visa category may be open to you. You will require a job offer that is full-time or 2 years or more. Okay, the employee must be accredited. You must be earning at least 55,000 New Zealand dollars or more based on a 40-hour week. Again, you need to meet the health and character requirements, and you can apply for residency after working for that employer for 24 months. Okay, it's approved within 10 to 15 working days, so really, really, really quick in that aspect in terms of processing. Okay, so I would say when you compare this visa and this visa, I think this one's more suited to families because you get residency quite quickly, whereas I think this one here, the work to residency visa under the accredited employer scheme, would suit a couple or a single person because it allows you to try before you buy. Again, we would look at your situation. We would recommend what visa we think would be the best for you. In terms of getting a temporary work visa, so this is the visa that you must apply for and quite quickly. And the reason being is that your New Zealand employer is going to be waiting for you to start work. Okay, and that job offer is very fundamental for your success in getting over to New Zealand and getting that visa. So you must do as much as you can to get the right visa to start work quickly. You must have an offer of employment from a New Zealand employer. You must have qualifications and or work experience related to the role. Okay, there must be no New Zealand citizens or residents available for the position. You need to meet the health and character requirements. The validity of the visa, so the time frame, will depend on your occupation. So some of you may qualify for a 1-year work visa, some of you may qualify for a 3-year work visa, some of you may qualify for a 5-year work visa. So it really does depend on the skill level of occupation. Again, we would discuss that with you. Now, once you get to New Zealand, if you're working with employer A, and then employer B offers you a job offer, you can switch and vary the conditions of your visa and switch from employer A to employer B. Okay, the application is processed within 20 working days, and again, there have been recent work visa changes in Canterbury, where Immigration New Zealand and the government have made it a lot easier to be able to work within Canterbury in your role. So there's somewhat a freedom of movement within the Canterbury area, where your job is not linked, where your visa is not linked to a specific employer. It's just linked to your job. So you can work, for instance, as a scaffolder for any employer in the Canterbury region. Okay, so again, another example of the government trying to make it a lot easier to recruit for people and for people to move around in what has been a very buoyant labour market in Canterbury. Okay, now with the working holiday visas, some countries have schemes with Immigration New Zealand where you can come and enjoy living and working in New Zealand temporarily on what's called a working holiday visa. The example that I give here is for a British citizen under the age of 31. You can either apply for a 23 or 12-month working holiday visa. The purpose is to holiday. Okay, you can, however, work for 12 months on a fixed-term contract. And what we're finding is a lot of working holiday visa applicants are converting into work visas or residency once they get here. So it's a great stepping stone visa to try before you buy, to come out and have some fun in New Zealand. You can work in any occupation, and that's relatively a quick process. It's approved within 2 to 5 days. I know that there's a lot of South Africans on this webinar. Unfortunately, there is no working holiday visa scheme for you in place, such as the one that I've listed there for British citizens. So really, really important for you to have an immigration strategy in place. Understand how the work visas can work together. And I think all of us humans like to know what the future holds for us. Okay, and this immigration strategy is going to give you that outlook. Okay, that includes the time frames and the cost for budgeting. So, for instance, we have applicants who apply for a work visa alongside applying for residency under the skilled migrant category. They get to New Zealand on a work visa, and then shortly after, within a couple of months, their residency comes through. So that may be very important for a family who have sold their belongings in their country, and they want to make sure quite quickly they can get residency. Okay, again, that could work for those who have got the work to residency visa. They don't, an applicant may not want to wait for 2 years. And you can definitely apply for that work to residency, and you can apply for the skilled migrant category at the same time to get residency a lot quicker. So again, that's another example of how the visas can intertwine and work together so that you can achieve your end result. And then for the younger guys, definitely working holiday visa and then a work visa to extend your stay in New Zealand. So everyone will be different. Everyone will have different needs and require different types of advice in visa processing. So, what we would do as part of that evaluation is give you what we think is the best strategy in place for your given circumstances. Okay. Medicals and police certificates. In most visa categories, you must have an acceptable standard of health. I would always visit your GP just to get a general checkup. Okay. Only obtain your medical once your job offer has been obtained. Okay. Medicals are quite expensive and are only valid for 3 months. Okay. That doesn't really apply to the police certificates. The police certificates are valid for 6 months. So, if you're looking to get out there to New Zealand within that 6 months, go ahead and get your police certificates. They're less costly, and in some countries can be a long drawn-out process. So, it may pay to get the police certificates before the medical. Okay, medicals must be obtained from a panel of doctors. Okay, so each country may have a list of panel of doctors that you can obtain and book your medical from. Okay. In terms of the character side of things, if you have any previous criminal convictions, you need to disclose these. Okay, one way or the other, Immigration New Zealand will find out. If you don't disclose it, they will find out, and that will be a big cross against your name. Any non-disclosure is frowned upon. Okay, what we find is that a lot of the convictions that we see are very minor. Okay, so whilst you may be a little bit nervous, okay, what we would advise you to do is get certain documents to make sure you get through that process. So if in doubt, full disclosure, and we would obviously let you know. That's the same with the medical process. Also, if you're getting medical treatment, let us know, and we can then advise you, on the process, and there'll probably be likely a medical referral or a character waiver that's required for both of those aspects, and will delay the process just slightly. For those of you who are in occupations that need registration by law in New Zealand, you need to obtain that registration as quickly as possible. The reason being is it's an extra step in the visa process, and for some occupations it can be complex and time consuming. Okay, New Zealand employers and New Zealand Skills and Mark and his team will only consider you once you've obtained that registration. Okay, because they will only put you forward for roles once that registration is obtained. So if I give you an example, we've just had probably about 3 or 4 electricians who have got their full New Zealand registration, and all of them have obtained job offers, and some of them have applied and got their visas through already. So it's really important that you have that in place, because you cannot legally work in New Zealand without that registration. So some examples of these occupations are teachers, nurses, plumbers, electricians, and gas fitters. So start that process. For some occupations, we can assist you with that registration process. In terms of why use Migration Associates, I want to be clear, there is no requirement for you to use an advisor. You can go it alone. But there is so much that you need to consider, and the process can be quite daunting. Okay, this is one of the biggest moves that you will make. Okay, and my advice is to make sure you get it right, because if you don't, it's going to lead to stress and delays. Okay, we are licensed by the IAA. Okay, so we need to meet CPD requirements. We need to make sure that we're competent. Okay, and they obviously have sanctions in place when advisors don't do their job properly. So it's really important that we know our stuff and give you the right advice. Because of the fact that we know our practice area, that's going to lead to a high success rate, so we will not be taking you on as a client if we didn't think we can get you through. And really important for us to assist you with the document preparation side of things, in terms of work experience documents, custody, relationship evidence, etc. We will liaise with Immigration New Zealand and your employer on your behalf. So there's certain documents your employer will be required to give to us. Okay, if they don't give it to us, we're going to ask them. So we take you away from that relationship with them. And if we need to get tough with them, we will do so. We also get tough with Immigration New Zealand if they don't process things correctly or they make mistakes. They are a government agency. They're not perfect. So we almost quality assure that the work that they do is correct, and from time to time we have to pull them up to say, listen, this was not decided correctly. Okay, so as touched upon previously, we would create an immigration strategy with you so you understand the process. Like I said, as humans, as long as we understand the process, we're a lot more comfortable with it. And you need to be comfortable with this process because there's a lot riding on it, the success, etc., and to get a clear picture for you and your family to get over to New Zealand. We love paperwork, and there is, a sarcastic element of that. You can't get through this process without that paperwork, okay? And we know what that paperwork needs to look like so that we can get you through the process. So unfortunately for those who don't like paperwork, you need to understand that it's something you're going to have to go through. There is a bit of pain there, but a little bit of pain to get some gain, and it will be all worth it in the long term. We will save you time, money, and limit your stress levels. Okay, now having come to New Zealand as a Kiwi with a New Zealand passport, it is a stressful process. You're forever completing and signing documents. I can tell you that now. And once you get to New Zealand, it still doesn't end. So concentrate on other aspects. Let us deal with the visa side of things, and that will lead to a more coordinated and organised approach to the process. Okay. We also push you along the process to minimise delays in terms of getting documentation from you. So happy to organise a free visa consultation with you. Like I said, it's the biggest decision you'll make, and I don't think you'll regret it. Okay. The lifestyle here is fantastic. Sit down with an advisor, understand your visa eligibility, the cost and the timeframes, and most importantly, have all your queries addressed. Okay, and make sure if you've got a partner that both of you are on the same page, understand all the ins and outs of this process, and that will lead to less confusion, and obviously having that certainty to get through this process. Okay, now both Skills in Demand and ourselves, we're pretty focused on giving you as much information about the move. Our Facebook page has a lot of posts about lifestyle and news from New Zealand, and having that at your fingertips is going to be important to prepare you for the move. We're also on Twitter and have some photos out there on the social media channels. So please do like our Facebook pages, both Skills in Demand and Migration Associates. There's also updates in terms of jobs, etc. on there. And you can also review the reviews that our company has received. So that information is going to be really critical because what you're doing today is getting as much information so that you're prepared as much as you can for this move. Okay, so I think what we'll do, Mark, if you want to put on your microphone, is have a quick Q&A session, I believe, Mark, and then basically the next steps from here is we'll email you with more information. I believe that a link to the actual seminar will also, the webinar will also be sent to you, and you will also have the opportunity to link to our key partners who can also assist with the move. They are, our key sponsors for the webinar are Migration Cover and the Bank of New Zealand. So without their help, the webinar couldn't go ahead. And we also work with Money Corp, who help with FX transfer, and PSS Removals, who can also help you ship your goods and belongings and give you advice on that aspect to get out to New Zealand. So I think perhaps maybe what we'll do is maybe have maybe 5 minutes, I guess, for any questions. If you'd like to, write your questions in your chat, perhaps Mark and myself will have that opportunity to answer them.
Great. So there's a question here for you that's come through. I get 105 points out of a job offer, but won't submit for fear of not being picked from the pool.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have even lodged an expression of interest with 105 points because you need that job offer. So with all of our clients, we would only lodge an expression of interest if they had a job offer in place to guarantee through. If you've got 105 points, it will be dependent on you getting that job offer.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of misunderstanding on the various forums that we spend a lot of time on, a lot of misinformation, and people seem to be spending a lot of money and time unnecessarily at the wrong time in the process.
Yeah, again, this is why if you do this yourself and have no advice or get pointed in the right direction, you will waste a lot of time and effort. The Immigration New Zealand website has only just changed. There's a lot of good information there, but it's very generic information. It's not going to be honed in on you as an applicant, given your personal circumstances. So, my advice is to get that advice from us, and we will point you in the right direction and apply your personal circumstances to your case.
That's great. Someone's asking about jobs in IT. I mean, certainly we've had success in the IT space. There are a lot of applicants in New Zealand who are looking for IT jobs. So, if you're based overseas, you're going to have a really good CV or some really good experience to sort of bring you to the top of the pile, as it were. So, if you're in that industry, there might be the need for you to go out to New Zealand on a reconnaissance trip and try and meet with employers and do it face to face.
I mean, if I'll give you an example with that. I mean, we had a client just recently come over. He had 6 interviews lined up, had 3 job offers. He's gone back to South Africa and he's getting his process completed. So for some of you, you may have to come over to New Zealand, meet employers, meet recruiters. Some occupations that may not be able to get, you may not be able to get a job offer remotely from where you are. So, it depends on your situation, but you need to make that commitment. In terms of, there's another question there. In terms of the EOI processing. Remember, if you get a job offer, you would apply for a work visa to get out there. You wouldn't rely on the residency visa to come through because it takes 3 or 4 months to process. Okay, there will be a requirement that you apply for a work visa in conjunction with your residency visa to get you out there. A work visa is approved within probably 3 weeks of lodgement. Okay, so that's how you would approach that that strategy of getting over there as quickly as possible.
Yeah. There's a South African-based civil engineer. We'd be certainly keen to see your CV at New Zealand Skills in Demand. So we'll get an email out to you after this webinar, and we're keen to have a look at your CV.
There's some queries about telecommunications. Listen, New Zealand's rolling out fibre optics across the whole country. Okay, and there are a lot of opportunities within the telecommunications space also. Okay, so listen, I've spoken to a lot of employers since I've been back, from white collar to blue collar, and there is a massive shortage across all occupations. And like I said, some of you may need to get to New Zealand and spend that money to meet employers and recruiters, and you need to be prepared to do that, and there is going to be a cost with no guarantees of getting a job offer. So it really just depends on how much you want this. If I give you an example, we had another client who installs curtains and shutters, and he came over. He's very skilled in what he did. He had 3 interviews and had 2 job offers. Okay, so that's an example of one very rare type of occupation who and the applicants come over to New Zealand and they've got the job offer and applying for a visa. So if you want to take this seriously, you need to kind of obviously look at making moves in terms of getting over here, and if you can't obtain that job offer from outside of New Zealand.
Great. So, Paul, there's a lot of sort of specific, questions coming through, especially on the visa front. I think the best thing for people to do is going to be to complete your, your evaluation.
Yep.
Because as you say, everyone's situation is different, isn't it? So that's going to be the best way for everyone out there with these specific questions.
Yeah, I think so. Because everyone's got different questions. I don't know who you are, what your situation is, and our kind of advice is geared up to what your personal circumstances is. In terms of you are able to come to New Zealand on a visitor's visa and look for work, and New Zealand employees will be more than willing to have a very nice cup of coffee with you, and to kind of discuss your situation. So you may try organise those meetings before you get out here, And that's certainly what other people do, to give you that certainty and spend a period of time in different locations. Okay, I mean, I guess what we'll probably do is just wrap up here. I think, the key. I think the key things that we want you to take away from this whole webinar is firstly that there is a demand for skilled workers in New Zealand across all sectors. Okay, now within some of those sectors, Mark and his team will be able to assist you. For some occupations, he may not be. Okay, but don't be put off if Mark and his team can't assist you, because the likelihood is there is that demand in New Zealand, and then you need to decide how you're going to progress that. The other key thing is the lifestyle. It's lifestyle. If you want a better lifestyle, New Zealand is certainly an option for you, and that is the key thing. Having spoken to so many clients here, having come back, that is the key thing that's changed for them. It's a better lifestyle. Ultimately, you'll be still doing the same job in a different country, but this country allows you to have a better lifestyle doing that job, and it will allow you to enjoy that lifestyle with your family and your friends. So, if there's any other questions about lifestyle, do let us know. We've tried to give you a good snapshot of all the aspects such as healthcare, education system, etc. Okay, if you've been to New Zealand, fantastic, you would understand that. If you haven't, jump on a plane, get out there, get here and understand that lifestyle, because ultimately that is the change that you're looking for. The visa side of things, complex, need a job offer. What we can do is put that strategy in place. And on the job side of things, if Mark and his team can assist you, get the documents out to him, because he's looking for certain occupations, etc., to help and get job offers for. So, Mark, did you have any other aspects that you wanted to add to that kind of summary?
Hey, look, no, I think you've really hit the nail on the head there, Bore. Not too much else to add. I mean, look, New Zealand Skills and Demand, we are one company. We're a relatively small company, and we've got a specific, set of demand or set of employers and recruiters that we work with. So, we can't help everyone, unfortunately. I think in terms of some general advice, with Google and the internet these days, it's pretty easy to start to get an understanding of the local market. In New Zealand, I mean, seek.co.nz is a great general recruitment website in New Zealand. So just go and type in your occupational industry, and have a look and see what type of jobs are out there. The challenge that everyone will come into is trying to email and connect with employers on email, because there's going to be hundreds of other people doing exactly the same thing to these local companies. So you've got to try and set yourself apart. Mention that potentially you're going out to New Zealand on a reconnaissance trip, and that you're willing to meet on these dates. And that will increase the likelihood of getting those meetings face to face. Okay, but yeah, as Boris said, I think it's time for us to wrap up. We're going to be in touch with a lot more information, after this webinar completes. So this is just the start. We'll be sending you a lot more resources, from CV templates to visa evaluations, and certainly for those we've been chatting with, do send your CV through. We'll give you some feedback, and yeah, just appreciate it. It's a little bit hard for us to specifically answer each and every one of your queries directly, without often seeing CVs or understanding exactly your situation. But we will certainly come back to you over the coming days and couple of weeks.
Fantastic, thanks, Mark. And listen, thank you very much for your time, and I can assure you that the time that you're spending and researching will all be worth it. So get in touch with us, like our Facebook pages, get all that information, and hopefully we can assist you make the move out to New Zealand. So happy to assist, and again, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.